Today's topic, to be sure you're on the right airplane, is become your own boss, the ins and outs of franchise ownership. And our speaker, Mark Schnurman, helps people explore business ownership through franchising. And he is a franchisee and one of the top franchise consultants here in the United States. Prior to becoming an entrepreneur, Mark led sales and HR teams in financial services and commercial real estate. He has a law degree from Ohio State College of Law and a bachelor's in labor studies from Penn State. Mark, I'm going to turn things over to you.
Deborah, thank you for the kind introduction. Welcome, everybody. I'm excited every time I have the opportunity to speak in front of a group of successful people who are looking to perhaps broaden their horizons and learn more. It's always an honor. So thank you. What I would start off by just saying, just to frame the conversation, is for most of you, I'm assuming you've heard of franchising, but may not know a tremendous amount about it. That is natural. So I'm here to help you, help answer any questions that you might have and sort of frame it for you. I also have an offer. My book is called The Perfect Franchise. It's available on Amazon. If you read on Kindle, you have to get it on Amazon. But at the end, if you would like a copy, just let Deborah know. Or you could email me directly your address and I can send you a copy of the book. So, just to kick things off, it's important, like I said, we don't know a lot about franchising in most cases. And I think it's great that LaSalle's the Explorers, because it's really an exploration process and it's learning and it's understanding. And franchising could be as an alternative career path. So you can, like I did, I left the corporate world to get into franchising and as my permanent career path. You can look to transition into it a few years and build something parallel to what you're currently doing in the corporate world. Or the third is people look at it as an investment. It's a non-correlated asset class. So it goes well with somebody's real estate portfolio or their stock portfolio because it works differently. So a lot of different ways to look at franchising. And just to share with you, as you look at this slide, Franchising Force is my business. I am the owner of Franchising Force. I'm associated with the company called IFPG, which is the International Franchise Professionals Group. And think of that as sort of the back office. So I have the personal relationships with my clients for sure, and also with the franchisors. IFPG has sort of the contractual relationships, and I have a portfolio of hundreds and hundreds of brands through them. And lastly, I am a member of the Forbes Business Council. And I'm one of the top 1% franchise consultants in the country, had over 40 placements last year. And I share that with you. I know a little bit about franchising and want to be able to share that with you today. So before I get into sort of, why people get into franchising, let me tell you about my story and why I did it. And a few years ago, I was doing a little bit of soul searching. I had a good amount of success in the corporate world, but I wasn't necessarily what one would call happy. Turns out on reflection, I was probably unhappy, just didn't know it. So I sort of assessed what was important to me in life. And I came up with certain things, like I wanted to be a presence in my family's life. And that means my wife and my children. And there are a lot of ways I could do that. I could have a job and do that, but that was important. I wanted to provide for them financially. And again, I could do that with a job, or I could own a business and do that. So that wasn't necessarily dispositive of the decision I should make. I like to add value to other people. That's crucial for me. And whether I was in human resources, helping somebody career path, or it was in sales management and training and helping somebody really develop their skills and take their career forward, was all about that. And so, right, I could do that in a corporate world. I could do that on my own. My third value, as I was doing this assessment, it was very clear that I wouldn't be able to do that as a employee. I want autonomy, I want freedom, and I want decision making. I want to be the person who does what he wants, when he wants to do it, how he wants to do it. That was critically important to me. And I realized that the corporate world would no longer provide that for me. So that's sort of my story and my why, and why I transitioned into business ownership and franchising. So what are some of the reasons that maybe some of you or just people in general have for owning their own business? And for this, you can put them into the chat. So I am not seeing them, and that could be an error on my part. So here's what I hear a lot from my clients. They're looking to build income. In other words, they want to make being your own boss. Okay, right on. Marguerite, absolutely. Owning my own business, passive income. Oh, here. So it's just a little bit delayed. Got it. Become my own boss after layup, income. Awesome. Yeah, those are the reasons that I hear. It's income, it's wealth building, creating a legacy for my family. I'm working with somebody right now who's late 50s, and all Douglas wants to do is make sure his children are set. So he wants to build a business that they can transition to over time. It's control, freedom, and autonomy, which I talked about. Another big piece that I hear a lot is authenticity. People want to be themselves and often feel like the constraints of the corporate world limit that. They want a sense of pride, a sense of accomplishment. And I got to be honest with you, fun. I have fun every day. And if you're not having fun, you can. And I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but I'll frame it differently. I was unhappy in the corporate world, but I didn't realize how profoundly and deeply unhappy I was until I realized how happy I could be. Like, I'm the happiest guy in the world right now, what I do professionally. So it's awesome. And that's just sort of a game changer, for me, for sure. What does it take to be successful as a business owner? Again, if you want to answer in the chat, control, autonomy, building business for children, family, perfect. So what does it take to be successful as a business owner? And I'll tell you, I came up with passion. Absolutely. I was thinking about this, the last couple of weeks, what it really takes to be successful. And I came up with 5, but would love to see if you guys have a couple of others that we can add to the list. But passion's definitely important. Okay. So passion, determination, absolutely. So an effective listener. Absolutely. Those are great ones. Internal sense of responsibility. In order to be successful as a business owner, you have to believe the locus of control. In other words, you can drive the results. That's internal to you. Results aren't driven by the economy, by interest rates. Results are driven by you. Hugely important, because in the corporate world, there are so many, different people there who support organizations. But when it's your business, it's you. Achievement, drive, determination. Somebody, Marguerite, put determination. Absolutely. Self-confidence. You have to believe in yourself. If you don't have a high level of self-confidence, it is hard to get on as a business owner. Decision-making ability. And what that means is there's an ambiguity piece in here. What that means is when you think about decisions, if you have all the facts, it's really easy to make a decision. So for example, if you're buying a house, you can compare 2 mortgages with their rates side by side. But in a business, you're not always going to have all the facts. Indeed, most of the time you won't. You're going to have 75% of them, 80% of the facts, and you have to make a decision. So you have to have the confidence to do that. And because you're not going to be 100%, you have to have the self-confidence, it goes back to switch. I made a mistake. Here's how I'm going to fix it. And then the listening, communication skills. both receptive and sharing of communication. So verbal, written, hugely important because they relate to your ability to manage other people, your ability to sell, your ability to work with vendors. So all of that is critically important. What is a franchise? So real simply, a franchise is a business that you have the opportunity to buy, and it's something theoretically somebody else has perfected. And I say theoretically because there are some awesome franchise brands out there, but like everything else in life, they're not all perfect. Proven business model. It's really a business in a box. It gives you everything that you need theoretically from sales and marketing processes, the systems, the vendor relationships, the business model, the training, the ongoing support. They'll tell you how much money you need, how much money you need to spend on different things. So it's all laid out for you. So franchises are great for people who, like me, don't really have a great idea that they want to turn into a business. Franchisor essentially sells you a protected territory. It could be a location. When we think of franchising, we probably think of McDonald's, right? It could be a McDonald's has a physical location, or it could be in a lot of home services brands, you'll have zip codes that will be protected, that relate to a certain number of homes or a certain number of people, and you pay for that. You can use their trademark, their ops manual, basically take their business and replicate it. And this is a quote that I'm really not good with technology today, Deborah. Huh? So this is a quote I love. Michael Gerber wrote the book, The E-Myth, and it's an awesome book. And really what it talks about is that in order to succeed, you want systems and processes. And so franchising has the systems that permit ordinary people to achieve extraordinary results. And it's highly predictable. If you're matched to a brand that fits who you are, you should have a good level of success in that. Okay, so franchising pros or cons. And really what I want to do here, and this is an awful slide, so my apologies in advance, but what I want to do here is just kind of go through some things. There's a saying in franchising, you're in business for yourself, but not by yourself, because you have all of the ongoing support and the systems. But it also limits your creativity and making a business your own. And different franchisors have different ways of doing it. With McDonald's, there is no personal touch. With a lot of other businesses, you'll have that opportunity. And I don't mean that as a negative to McDonald's. They just have their systems and they work incredibly well, and they're going to require you to follow them exactly. It's a proven model, so you get predictable results. That said, though, there's still no guarantee of success or income, and you have that unpredictability that human behavior brings. Higher success rate. The government did a study several years ago, and franchises succeed at about twice the rate of non-franchise businesses. And what they did is they looked at the number of franchise units that were around 5 years later versus new businesses. But it's for that, it's a little bit more of an expensive business model because you pay franchise fees up front and you're paying the royalties on an ongoing basis. Fit. If you find the right fit, it's a performance multiplier and significantly reduces your chances of failure. But again, less profitable at any particular revenue level. Finally, you can scale and build an empire in a franchise. But there are limits to that scalability because you don't own the business. So for example, if you had a burger joint and you wanted to expand it yourself all over the country, you can do that. If you want to join a burger franchise, you have to pay for each individual location. Some territories are going to be taken. So there are limits to it. So if you're looking to, be Elon Musk, probably not the right way to go, but he will let you tweet. So that's important. Okay. So what are some franchises, and you can put this in the chat, some well-known franchises or maybe some not well-known franchises that you may have? that you may know about, rather, maybe you use on a regular basis. And I want to let everybody know Starbucks is not a franchise. It used to be a franchise in Canada. A lot of people think it is in the US, but it's not. They're all corporate owned stores. Chick-fil-A, you know, Kevin, interestingly, Liberty Tax, yeah. TJ Maxx, no. Orange Theory F45, yes. I will tell you, Chick-fil-A is interesting because it's really not a franchise the way it works. You pay $10,000 and you're buying yourself a job running a fast food restaurant. And not that that's necessarily a bad thing. The income potential is certainly there. Salad works great. And it's interesting because all of these so far are ones that have a brick and mortar location. You know, even Liberty Tax is sort of office based. And that is really, I think, what everybody, you know, considers when you consider franchising. You think of the brick and mortars, right? The McDonald's, the Wendy's of the world, the Orange Theories, F45s, all of that 100%. A lot of automotive franchises, Meineke, Maaco, Jiffy Lube. So you have all that. And there's a lot more. And in fact, there are probably many, or there are many more non-brick and mortar franchises than there are, you know, brick and mortar retail ones. So the three categories that I break franchising out into is, yeah, Huntington Learning Center, great one. Home services. What home services are as a category is any product or service that somebody would want done in their home or for their home or to their home. So I'll give you some examples. CertaPro Painters, which is actually headquartered in the greater Philadelphia area. It's the largest painting contractor in the country, and it's a franchise. CertaPro Painters, Budget Blinds, right? They come to your house, which is it's a great business model because most window treatment decisions are made by women. Women prefer to shop at home. All the research tells us for things like that than to go into a Lowe's, Home Depot, or local blind store. And so that drives it because the business comes to you. It's a roofing contractor. It is a landscaping contractor. It's a kitchen remodeling contractor. And it is, so you have Huntington Learning Center. They're tutoring franchises where the tutoring is done in the home. So that we would consider a home service. It's also an educational franchise, but goes both ways. A senior care franchise. As Americans continue to age, what winds up happening is we want to stay in our homes more and we need assistance. So whether it's skilled nursing or companion care, so you have things like that as well. You have some businesses that are going to be completely residual based, like a pest control company, a kitchen remodeling company is going to be very transactional. So runs the gamut. Tell you, home services, your cost of entry is anywhere from $75,000 all the way up to $300,000-$400,000. And the difference is really how much scale you want. $125,000 will typically get you one territory. You know, 300,000 will typically get you 3 to 5 territories so you can scale and grow a bigger business. All depends on what your goals and objectives are. That's home services. And if you have any questions as I'm going through these categories, you know, please feel free to put them in the chat. And when I'm done with the 3 categories, I can answer any questions that you might have. Business services. I break this into 2 areas within business services. The first one are the people side. And I know we have at least one person or 2 people who I heard, I think somebody was in HR, if I heard earlier, right? So that we're going to call the people side. So on the HR side or the people side, it's recruiting, it's training, it's coaching, right? Anything to improve the staff that you already have. Or to grow the staff you already have. So you have those recruiting franchises, the training. If you're in sales, there's a really good chance you heard of one of them, which is called Sandler Sales Institute. And, you know, probably have trained, well, certainly have trained more salespeople than any other sales training organization in the world. They are huge, ton of books that have been written by members of the organization. with a lot of the business services and home services, they're not necessarily going to be household names unless you're in that space. So like Express Professionals is a staffing firm. They have hundreds. MRI, both of them have hundreds and hundreds of locations. If you're in that space, you may know them. If not, you probably won't. The other side of business services is what I kind of consider the hard side, the not people side. It could be marketing organizations. It could be IT services, a print shop, the UPS store would be a perfect example of one of these. Fast signs would be another example in that space. These are great opportunities for people who like the business to business relationship and sale. These require a little bit more sales acumen and experience. Home services, a lot of the leads are generated for you. Business services, you're doing a little bit more of the outreach yourself. Cost of entry, let's say 75 to 200, again, based on how many territories that you might have. The last sector is retail. And that's what we think about as evidenced by the answers that you guys shared. Absolutely. Retail is huge. So it's the food concepts, automotive. Some of them are going to be educational, like the Huntington Learning Center, Kumon, Mathnasium. Some of them will be health and fitness. And in that space, you know, you have the Orange Theory, the F45s. You also have concepts that most of us won't think about all that much. Salon suites, where you bring a lot of salon professionals together. It's really a real estate play as much as anything else. You have mental health, you know, where you're bringing psychologists together from a mental health standpoint. So there are a lot of interesting ones like that. Retail obviously has a physical location. The nature of a physical location means it's going to be more expensive. In the greater Philadelphia area, McDonald's is going to be $1 million and change, right? So that's the high end of what it's going to cost. All the way down, probably 300,000. And I realize we're virtual, so not everybody's necessarily in the Philadelphia area, but hard to get a retail location for less than 300,000. And most of them are going to be probably 400,000 to 600,000 for the typical retail location. And so you see there's a lot of diversity in franchising, and it really all depends on what you're looking to accomplish, what your skill set is, and your talents and strengths as much as anything else. So any questions, feel free to put them in the chat on the 3 different sectors. And I will share with you that there are other sort of subcategories of these, right? There's some brands that don't necessarily fit exactly into one of these boxes, but I think this just really helps to broadly define things. Okay. So why don't people join a franchise, right? You can make money. You can have freedom, autonomy, build a legacy for your family. There's so much great stuff with it. Why don't people do it? As much as anything else, it's fear, baby. It is fear. And this is a slide that I show, and I know it's a particularly ugly slide. It's one that I showed to all of my clients on our second call. First call is an intro call. Second call, I kind of walk them through a process where I explain to them franchising and learn more about them. But the idea here is you hit what I'll call the fear zone or the fear barrier. And if you think about it, right now, we're exploring, we're talking, we're learning. There's not a lot of pressure. Nobody's in decision-making mode. The further you go through in a process and you start talking to individual franchise brands and you're doing research, you're reviewing the FDD. The FDD, so franchising is highly regulated. The Federal Trade Commission regulates it and requires every franchise brand to publish essentially offering memorandum is what it is. And it's got a number of different, we call them items, and you go through it. When you read the FDD, if you're not scared at that point, you have no fear in your life. Because it's meant to scare you. Validation is when you're talking to other franchisees. So there are a lot of chances you go forward, you're going to get scared. And so I want to normalize fear for all of you. You need to be afraid. It's a big decision. It's a bigger decision than switching jobs. Because when you switch a job, if it's a bad job, they're still paying you. You may be miserable, but at least they're paying you. If you go into something where you're paying for it and you're unhappy, it's a bigger decision. So you want to be afraid. It's normal. And when we talk about fear, every conversation I have with my clients is, how are you feeling? What are your fears right now? Because I want to normalize it. And some of them may be rational. It could be, Mark, I'm not sure I could afford this. Well, Deborah, I'm glad, because I'm not sure you can either. Right. But you need to understand that. But if you don't manage your fear, it'll just keep growing, and you're just eventually going to hit a wall. And my process, everything that I do is designed to enable people to make fact-based decisions. I don't necessarily care. I believe in abundance. I don't have a scarcity mindset. If I do everything I'm going to do, I'll make a good living and I'll help people. That's what I believe. And with that mindset, I don't really, if it doesn't work for somebody, I'll tell them. And it's really important to understand, though, it's all based on the facts. That's what you want to do, because if you let your emotions drive your decision-making, you're not going to get to where you want to get to. I see there are a couple of questions, by the way, about financing. I'll talk about that in a few minutes. Franchise exploration. So this is kind of what the process that I walk people through looks like. I should say not even kind of. This is exactly the process that I walk people through. And assume it takes about 3 months. Could be a little bit less, but assume about 3 months. I will also let you know that I am paid by the franchise brands. So when I talk to people, I let them know that up front. There's no cost for my service, except your commitment, not your commitment to join, but your commitment to follow the process. Because if somebody's not going to follow the process, they're not going to succeed in this, and they're wasting their time and mine. First step is learning and exploration, or learning and introspection. And that's the consult call. That's when I ask a lot of questions, because we want to really calibrate. I'm going to switch to the next slide just to show you some of the areas that we want to think about, right? What are your professional strengths and weaknesses? And weaknesses are huge. My career, I managed hundreds and hundreds of people at a time. I'm probably a better leader than I am a manager. But when I decided I was going to have my own business, I don't want to manage anybody. Managing me is a full-time job. So, that was something that I wanted to look for that was not part of me. Financial ability. How much time do you have? If you have 5 hours, 10 hours a week, franchising may not be the best option for you. How much time do you have? What are your management skills, sales skills, interests, family support? It's really funny because I'm a guy, so I can make fun of us. And what happens is guys are certain that their wife will do whatever, in some cases, that they decide. So I had a gentleman, great guy, Jason, says, Mark, look, it's all good. My fiance doesn't need to be involved. She's going to do whatever I want to do. And I said, okay, so just remember this conversation, because I couldn't get him to engage, because I always want the whole family together. Couldn't get him to get her to engage. He may not have tried. We get to the end. He said, Mark, I can't move forward because, it was now his wife at the time. They were getting married. She won't let me. I said, let me get on the phone and talk to her. And her biggest frustration was being left out of the process. So family support is critical. I learned my lesson there. Unless both spouses, assuming their spouses are engaged, or if there's a financial partner as well as an operating partner, they all have to be engaged. So those are the matching factors. And there are more of them, but if we calibrate these correctly, we can match people very, very well to brands. So after the learning and introspection, I go away, I take the information, the rich information that my clients share with me, and I basically create a franchise business model, which is, what does Susan's perfect franchise business look like? I take that, I compare it to franchise brands that are available and will resonate in that area. Then I speak to, Susan in that case about it. The ones that resonate, we get her talking to the brands. And that's the due diligence. And again, exploration. You're exploring the brands. You're not committing. When you start talking to the brands, there's no commitment to join one. Indeed, I got asked this question on earlier today. Probably 1 out of every 3 or 4 people who enter into the process ultimately will join a franchise. And that's great. Not everybody should. It's not right for everybody. So 1 out of every 3 or 4 people will join. So it's learning, it's exploration. I speak to my clients weekly, debrief, discuss fears. What did you learn? What information do you need? We'll talk about the FDD funding. And then about 6 months in, you're at decision. 6 to 8 weeks, 10 weeks, 12 weeks, depending on how long, you're going to be at decision time after you start talking to the brands. I will tell you, I give a lot of insight to my clients in terms of what you want to look at. Because when you're exploring a business for the first time, you don't even know what questions to ask. And you shouldn't, because it's your first time. So I have 6 factors. I don't have a slide on this, but I'll just share the 6 factors that I think are crucial to decision-making for people. 1, how do I get my clients? Are they walking into a retail location? Do I have to market? Do I have to cold call? Do I have to network? How am I getting my clients? And all of these, you have to be comfortable with what your role is. Number 2, how do I service my clients? What does supply chain look like? How do I hire? How do I train my staff? Things like that. What do the economics look like? How much is it going to cost me to get in, and how much money can I make? Number 4, what's expected of me as the franchisee? This one's really important because how much time do I need to put in? What am I doing with that time? And as much as anything else, who are the people succeeding with this concept and who are the people struggling? Understanding that, because am I going to be like one of the people who succeeds, or am I somebody who struggles? The last 2 speak to the unique value proposition of the brand. And I don't work with, and this sounds a little bit obnoxious, but it's not meant to. My clients are awesome. They are the best and the brightest in that we have to offer, probably like most of you here. They're smart, they're well prepared, they're professional. And as they move forward in the process, I always tell them, remember those things. You're awesome. And so when you're talking to a franchise brand, you need them to know that in a nice way. And, I don't know if you can see me, but there's not a linear progression in a business. You don't go straight up. It goes up and down, right? And you want higher highs and higher lows, but you're going to bump into things in every business that you have. And so as you're bumping against things, you want to know you have a partner on the other side who is going to help you and support you and guide you when you have a problem. So what's the value proposition the brand offers to you? The other side is, look, if we go back to the burger joint, you know what makes us unique? Why are our burgers different than McDonald's? Why are our process systems? What makes you unique? How does that get articulated in marketing at the point of sale? How does the client experience that differentiation? All of those things are critically important. And so those are the 6 factors that I encourage my clients to delve into. And then when they're making a decision on the back end, 6-8 weeks after they started the due diligence, I'm going through that with them. Okay, how do you feel about this? How do you feel about that? I give them a form and we track it, because it's a big decision. You want to make sure you're making the right decision. Okay. Funding a franchise. So I'll frame this at a high level, and if anybody, because I think there were a couple of questions about, or one question about it, maybe 3 ways to pay for a franchise. One is self-funding. You can just write a check. And for those of us who can do that, it's awesome. At least that's what I hear. For the rest of us, there are a variety of ways of doing it. First one is what we call ROBS. ROBS is actually a way of self-funding. It's called Rollover for Business Startups. ROBS. ROBS is the federal government, and I know there's some 401k legislation right now. I don't think there's any impact on the ROBS, but essentially the federal government allows you to use non-employer-based retirement accounts. So you take your 401k, you roll it over, or you have IRAs that you've had for a long time. You can use that money, you take it out, and there's no penalty for taking it out. You don't really take it out. Technically, what you're doing is you're putting a C Corp in your retirement plan. So instead of your Fidelity or Vanguard is a Philadelphia, right? I think Vanguard's down your guys' way. Instead of the mutual funds, what you're going to do is you're going to have the C Corp, which will buy the franchise. So that's a way of using your retirement accounts as equity. Costs a few $1,000s to set up, and you have a fiduciary who runs it for you on an annual basis. Then you have home equity. You have a house that's worth $500,000. You have $300,000 in equity. Actually, these days, from what I hear, everybody has a house that's worth $3 million, and right, and it's all equity. But so you have that, so you could use home equity. The other thing, and I use SBA, Small Business Administration, as a proxy for you can take a loan out. And the reason I use SBA is because the Small Business Administration guarantees a portion of each loan. It's a pseudo federal government agency, so they guarantee a portion of each loan. Because of that, you're usually going to get the best rates or terms on an SBA loan than you will on something on another kind of loan. That said, there are some community banks, local banks, that if you have a good relationship with, they may be very competitive. Usually you need some skin in the game on these. So typically, like if it's $100,000 concept, the SBA doesn't really like doing loans under 100,000. So you're probably going to need to a little more, but usually you could do 25% of your own money, and the balance of it could be an SBA loan. They have what I call quick and easy. They don't call it that, but they have a quick and easy program that lets you, for anything between 100 and 150,000, if you have a decent credit score, which is 680 or higher, and a franchise that's on the registry. The SBA is a registry, which is, I guess, a way of saying is approved franchises. You can pretty quickly get that. Pretty quickly used to be 30 to 45 days. Since COVID, it's more like 3 to 4 months. Just to frame that for you, a Rob's or home equity line usually takes 30 days. And you get different rates and terms a little bit based on how the individual franchise is performed. Interestingly enough, and I'm saying it because it's right in front of me, Huntington Learning Centers had a lot of trouble and had a lot of non-performing loans in the past. So, that's going to be harder to finance a little bit from a rate and term standpoint than a McDonald's would be for that matter. But that's how the funding works. And certainly if you have any questions on that, I can answer them. Investor equity versus bank loans. I think and the preferred mix is really the preferred mix of equity versus, just answering a question, preferred mix of equity versus funding. If you're going to fund is really 25% equity, 75%. There will be some institutions that'll want you to have a minimum of $50,000 of equity. Okay, so if you're borrowing 100,000, they're still going to want you to have 50,000. So you're going to your total funding would be 150, because they're all a little bit different. So it really depends on the individual lending institution. So I hope that's clear. And then any other questions, please put in the chat box. So what I want to just share with you is 4 case studies. These are just ones that I don't know, relatively recently popped into my head for whatever reason. So Bill was an executive. My practice is across the nation. So geography doesn't necessarily matter. Bill is or was a chief operating officer in the oil and gas space. He's in Texas. Bill's probably 61. So he probably came to me when he was 60. Really good career, didn't need to work. He was at the point where he didn't need to work, but wanted to add value, really bright, sharp, engaging. And so as we went through the process, flexibility and value add were critically important. He may be moving. He went to Lehigh. He's originally from Pennsylvania. maybe he's going to move back to Pennsylvania, be closer to family. He also thought about possibly moving to Florida. So he wanted a concept that also didn't have geographic restrictions. He ultimately joined a coaching franchise, relatively low cost of entry, about $80,000, and it's executive coaching. And the beautiful thing about executive coaching is we can all hang our shingles that we're executive coaches. This brand gave him the training. He already had the innate skills, but they gave him the training and also the materials to support him. But most importantly, they're teaching him how to build the practice, because you could be the best in the world, but if you cannot articulate it and gain clients, it doesn't so much matter. And I often say that with McDonald's. McDonald's is all about the systems and processes. Now, I'm a vegan, but I'm assuming nobody else on the call is, and you can all probably cook a better burger than McDonald's, but you don't want to compete with them because of the processes and systems. Same thing in the coaching space. These guys do great because of the systems and support. So that's one example. Next is Todd. Todd's in New Jersey. Came to me a couple of years ago. He ran marketing for a medical device company, small medical device company, had a good career, was absolutely miserable, probably late 40s at the time, absolutely miserable. Mark, I want to do something else. So we talked a lot, and his mom had a remodeling business many, many years ago. She had since retired for years, and he just always had that in the back of his head. So he actually joined a kitchen remodeling brand. He's crushing it. He was their rookie of the year. And then he added territory. And last year, his second full year in the business, he doubled his previous income. First year, he matched it. Second year, he doubled his previous income and was one of the top 5 or 10, producers in the firm. And he was, which was interesting, he was the only one less than 3 years in the business in that mix. So he did great. Natalia is in the research triangle, Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill area in North Carolina. And she was an educator and, wasn't working. Her kids were young at the time. And her husband, David, was working. David wasn't going to be involved in the brand. And I love this story because David reached out to me a couple of weeks ago telling me how happy they are and how satisfied and how well they're doing in the business. And, he says, and Mark, I'll never forget what you told me on the first call when you presented it, because what I told him, he's like, I'm never going to do that. It's a martial arts studio for children. It's called Premier Martial Arts. He's like, Mark, I'm never going to do that. You can cross that off the list. And I said, Natalia, do you feel the same way? And she said, I don't. I said, okay, David, listen to your wife, talk to them. And they bought 3 locations, and each location is doing better than the previous one. And so it's awesome. But she wanted to interact with kids. She missed that. She wanted to add a lot of value. And, martial arts, it teaches you values. There's the physical component, but as much as anything else was the value component. And that was critical for her. The last was also in New Jersey. Kevin wanted a family legacy, and Kevin has 1 son and 5 daughters. He's in his mid 40s. And so the family legacy had very little to do with his son. He's, and I joke about it. He loves his son just as much, but he's like, all I need is a nail salon or this or that. And so we came up with this concept. It's called salon suites, which I mentioned it earlier. And essentially what a salon suite concept is you take the real estate, you have like 6,000, 8,000 square feet, you break it up into these little rooms, like 100, 120 square feet. And the franchise drives a lot of this for you, but you break it up and then you lease it out to business owners who are, doing Botox or teeth whitening or hair or nails or massage or tattoos, whatever it might be. So you're finding about 30 people like that. The beauty of the business is once you're up and running, it's semi-absentee. You don't have to market. They're all business owners. You don't care if the nail tech does a bad job. As long as he or she has clients, you're happy. So it's more a real estate play than anything else. So he just loved that. And he did multiple locations of that. And you hear sort of the theme. A lot of people do multiple locations. This gives you the opportunity to scale. But those are some examples. There are a lot of others. So a couple of questions that I see. And I don't know if everybody sees, is Burger King being sued for false advertising and the effect on franchising? I don't know if it will have any effect on Burger King. My sense is it probably won't. And it certainly doesn't have any impact on franchising in general, I don't believe. What I would tell you is like, you have bad players in every space. And so if you think about Enron a number of years ago and what they did, every corporation wasn't doing that, just Enron was. And so you'll have stuff like that. I know somebody who was an Arby's franchisee. He was one of the top in the system. And the reason he was one of the top in the system is they were supposed to have a quarter pound of meat, and he would always take one slice less than a quarter pound. And so that was how he maximized it. But it didn't have to be, he would have done that whether he was in a franchise or otherwise. They actually found him out over time, and then they made him give 2 extra slices or something to make up for it. How important is industry experience for franchise you select? How many of your case studies had great question. How many have previous experience? So the beautiful thing is you don't need any experience to be in the space. So none of them in these 4 cases had any direct experience. And if I tell you it's a painting franchise, you're not the one doing the painting. If it's a senior care franchise, you're not the caregiver. If it's a burger franchise, you're not the one flipping the burgers. And so you need business acumen and the traits that we, if I go back to that slide, and the traits that we talked about earlier, the self-confidence, decision-making, that's what you need. Every brand will teach you their particular model. And in fact, and this is going to sound counterintuitive to the way we think. So in my corporate role, when I was in HR or sales management, but HR in particular, if I was going to hire an analyst, let's say I was going to hire a vice president or director level analyst, and I was in real estate, if I would bring somebody in from financial services, everybody would be like, why would you do that? Even if it was the best candidate, if they don't have the direct experience, you have a lot more risk. Franchisors have the direct experience. So they're not looking for that. What they're looking for is business builders. They can train you on everything else and you can execute on the training. But franchisors are not looking for technicians. They're looking for business builders. And that's one of the things in Michael Gerber's, the E-Myth, that he talks about. Everything is about the business builder, not the technician. So you in a kitchen remodeling brand are not going to hang cabinets like the mom and pop kitchen remodeling person in your community. However, you're going to run a business infinitely better on average because you're bringing those systems and processes of the franchisor, and you're adding the talent of the individual employees that you'll have. So that's how that works. So what other questions do you have that I can answer?
So Mark, question about how to get the copy of the book. So anyone that attends live here, okay, can email me or Mark and say you'd like a copy. And Mark will get that to you. So we'll need a mailing address.
That's right.
And
Yep.
I will be sending an email out to everyone who attended live. And so you'll have my email address, Mark's email address, and a link to the recording. Everyone who registered will get a link to the recording, but if they did not attend live, they will not be able to get the book.
Thank you. Okay, so couple of things. Question is mental health services just housing or providing retail locations, right? So there are, but I don't like them. There are sort of the facility side of it, but I'm not a fan of them. So what I'm talking about is more, and you need a license to be the owner operator, but you do not need a license to be the owner. But it's more what the brand does is you rent the space and you bring in psychologists, social workers, and you do all of the business side for them. So the billing, anything associated with the business, what they are doing themselves is, you're not adding value to them from a mental health standpoint, but you're helping them run the building. So if you think about it, it's more than this, but it's WeWork on steroids for psychologists, social workers, kind of thing. Best way to inventory potential franchise opportunities, reach out to me is really the best way. There are no real centralized databases. I certainly don't. There are a lot of places you can go to see lists of franchises. Okay, so let me state that. And there's not a lot of accurate information about the individual franchises there. So if you have an interest in franchising, please reach out and I can help you with it. I have 700 or so franchises that I work with. I never send anybody a list because the list doesn't really necessarily do anybody any good. And we could talk categories and things, but feel free to reach out to me.